You will write this down, yes. Okay. All right. Is the pen going to be big enough? This? All right. If this is right. Yes. Okay. So, where are we? Trigonometry. Just got to make sure we got all the bits and pieces together. Okay. The first thing is, the title is Introduction to Trigonometry. Okay. Please write this down. Is that large enough for people to see at the back? Today's date is the 11th. Okay. So first part is the most important, which is your ability to interpret information and identify correct information. So we've done this before, but it's just to make sure that we're all on the same page. So what we want is to have a right angle triangle, which we represent by showing the right angle with the square in the angle that looks like a right angle triangle, which is 90 degrees, yeah? Okay. So with that, so every right angle triangle, you will know that this is 90 degrees, and then that will help you to identify the hypotenuse. Yeah, is that okay? So we can already label the hypotenuse. We're going to be writing the words hypotenuse and the other two words that we use to label these sides a lot. So after you get used to what these words mean, or sorry, what they are, you can just abbreviate it to the letter. And the letter will be connected to the 9-letter acronym that we mentioned at the beginning of the lesson, SOHCAHTOA. Okay? All right. So in every question, there will be what we call a reference angle. And the reference angle is just the angle that they've given you, or it's the angle that they're asking you to figure out what it is. Okay? So the reference angle is the angle that they want you to look from. Now this symbol, okay, is a Greek letter called theta. So it looks like this, right? It's a Greek letter theta, and it's just like an O with a curved line through it, okay? And that's to represent the angle that you're looking from. Or the question is about, yes?
What does that mean?
It's just the symbol we use to label the angle. We could just use a letter, but the reason why we tend not to in this situation is because we would use letters for, say, the sides, for example. So it's to help reduce confusion. So you use a different type of symbol lettering system. Okay, but so what you need to do is in the question see that symbol and understand that's the angle that you need to look from. Yes, Connor. Say that again.
Is the top of that
Oh no, that's just whatever. Sorry, yeah, it's not meant to be open. Sorry, no. All right. So this symbol is for what we call the reference angle. Okay, reference angle. Okay, which means it's the angle that you're looking from. Okay. So it's either going to be the one here, which I'm pointing at, or the one over there. Okay? So in this case, this is the reference angle. So the first thing in you attacking these types of questions requires you to, one, identify the hypotenuse, and 2, identify what the reference angle is. Okay, like which angle we're talking about, which is the one that we're looking from. Okay, once you've done that, then we can identify the other 2 lines. The other 2 lines are called the opposite line and the adjacent line. Okay, the opposite line and the adjacent line. Okay, so out of A and B, in this triangle we've just drawn, which one is the opposite line? William?
B. No, A. Oh, no, it's B, sorry.
I'm pausing intentionally to make sure that you are confident about your response.
Not still the adjacent line, what you said.
The opposite line.
What? B? It's, no, it's, the other one. There's the other one.
There's only 2 options.
One next to A.
B.
No.
The opposite line is A.
What's the opposite to?
Good question. That's why step 2 is identify the reference angle. So you need to figure out what angle the problem is focusing on. So in this case, it's just this one here, the one we've labeled reference angle. Okay? So from this position here, this angle here, you can see, just like we've done with the hypotenuse, it's the one that's opposite to the right angle. We're looking at this symbol here. So in a question, it might be a symbol or it might be an actual value, like 30 degrees. Okay? So the reference angle is the angle that the question is focusing on. So because we're looking from here, A is the opposite line or the side. Okay? So in this case, the opposite is this one here. And the adjacent is the one that is adjacent to that reference angle. Adjacent meaning next to. Okay? Adjacent meaning next to. Okay? So in this particular drawing, the opposite is the one that is opposite our reference angle, which is why we need to identify the hypotenuse first. Because if you don't, you could say accidentally that this is the opposite line. Or, if you don't identify the hypotenuse first, you can see from this angle, both this line here and this line here, the hypotenuse are both adjacent to that angle. Both these lines are adjacent. So if you don't identify which line the hypotenuse is first, it won't be simple to identify the adjacent line because you have 2 options if you don't do this first. And this is why these steps are important. Okay? So you look at, this is the hypotenuse, and then where's my reference angle? It's over here, and from my reference angle, this line is opposite. This line is adjacent. Okay? Those are the 3 steps to correct identification. Hello, sir.
Will the opposite always be opposite the reference angle?
Always. So it's not going to be intentionally confusing. So in my different color, black, if my reference angle was here,
Opposite
would be B, and the adjacent would be A. Okay, so that's why it's important to figure out where my reference angle is first, and not just think, oh, it's the one that's up and down that's the opposite line. So it requires your thinking about how to identify these correctly. Jasmine.
How do you know where the reference angle goes?
The question will be very clear as to which angle you're looking at. So it will either be already labeled for you, and the question will say, find out what that angle is, or it will just be a symbol locked in there, or there'll be a value given. But it will be in the context of the question. It will tell you enough information to figure it out. It won't be just like, guess what angle we're looking from. Okay? Yeah. All right. So now that we know these are the 3 words, we can now abbreviate this every time we do these kinds of problems by the letter H, A, and O, instead of writing these whole words all together every time. So those are the three words we're trying to remember. Okay, so the reason for that is because when we look at our super acronym of SOHCAHTOA, it will start to make sense why we have those letters there. Okay, but that's going to come in later. Okay, that's going to come in later. But those OHs, AH and OA, has to do with the combination of the two letters that we're going to use, because like I said at the beginning, trigonometry is about the relationship between two lines and one angle, which is different to Pythagoras' theorem, which is the relationship between three lines. So in a test where you are tested on everything that you've learned, the question won't say, this is a Pythagoras problem. Please use this formula to then solve this. It's going to be a problem that's like, just like calculate. And based on what you see, you'll have to be selecting correctly what strategy to use. Okay? All right.